Hi, and welcome to the Leaders of the Jewel City. I'm Rich Wells, the Public Information Officer for the City of Glendale. Leaders of the Jewel City gives you an inside look into the decisions that help shape our city through the eyes of former mayors. In the coming months, we'll talk with these former city leaders about issues and projects they worked on during their term in office. Our guest this month is Jim Perkins, who served on the City Council from 1965 to 1971 and briefly served again in 1974. Perkins held the position of mayor from April of 1970 to April of 1971. Jim, talk about Glendale during your time in office. What did the community look like, and what were some of the issues you were working on at that time?
Well, the community looked like we had the red car running up the middle of Brand Boulevard, and then we had the railroad tracks running up Glendale Avenue, and we had a big Litchfield lumber field right on Glendale Avenue,
right.
and it was a small town, and it was a bedroom city, and we didn't have a lot of manufacturing going on in the city at that time. It was just basically a small town community.
Jim, you have somewhat of a distinguished history with the City of Glendale in that you were not only appointed to the City Council one time, you were appointed to the Glendale City Council twice. Can you talk about that?
Yes, I can. I was very active in the City of Glendale, the Junior Chamber of Commerce and the Park and Recreation Department. I was 8 years on the in the Park and Recreation Commission, and I was the president the last couple of years. And so I was pretty involved in the city and with my service clubs and so forth. And so when George Wickham passed away, unbeknownst to me, somebody suggested my name, and I was appointed to take his place. He had only been in office for, I think, about 6 months when he passed away. So I was appointed to the next election, which would be 18 months later. And so I served that 18 months, and then I decided to run for council and was reelected at that point. And then after 4 years, I decided to go back and start practicing some dentistry, and did for a couple of years. And then when Vern Allen was incapacitated with a stroke and so forth, I was reappointed again. They wanted somebody that wasn't going to run for council the next time up, and so I was reappointed. I assured them that I would not run again. But it was an enjoyable period of time, and we had a great councils that I was on. They were enjoyable. We had problems come up and so forth, but it was a great time.
Can you talk about some of those councils, some of the people who sat on those councils?
Well, initially, when I was appointed, when Wickham passed away, it was Howard Peters, and he always talked about the Brand Boulevard and so forth. That was his. He was protecting. I think he had a lot of land on Brand Boulevard, and he wasn't too sure he wanted a lot of people coming in on Brand Boulevard. But then we had Vern Allen and Herman Barnes, and you reminded me the configuration of the council was much different at that point. And
you sat in the middle of the room,
right? And so but that was a different. And then of course, when I was reappointed, we had a new council, and Ken Stevens was elected at that point. And of course, then I was on with McMillians and Garcia, and Haverkamp was there also. Yeah.
Now, who was your city manager during the time you were in office?
Gene Perkins.
Gene Perkins.
Gene and I came to Glendale both in 1952, and he was an extremely good city manager. He was very firm and very strong, and he did not want the council to talk to his heads of departments. He said, if you've got a problem with one of them, you come to me and I will solve the problem. If I don't solve the problem, then fire me. It only takes 3 votes. And he was persistent on that the whole time. And there was one councilman that ran purposely to try and get him fired because he didn't like what he had done. But that councilman was elected, and after he got to know Gene, they became the greatest of friends.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And of course, another time, in fact, when I was elected, Ken Stevens was elected at that point, and he had a business that he was running, as we all did at that point, and he was elected mayor, and he had never attended a council meeting, and so didn't really know the relationship of the mayor and the city manager and so forth, and that became a kind of a problem for a period of time, but
right.
They finally got it straightened out and so forth.
So back in the 1960s, the person who garnered the most votes in the election was automatically made the mayor.
Mayor for 2 years. And I didn't think that was... We had the problems with him not knowing the relationship and not having been on city council and not attending any meeting. And so I decided we should change that. And so I suggested it, and the council did go along with it, where now the mayorship is shifted each year, and it's so everyone has an opportunity to be mayor while they're elected and so forth. And I think that's much better. The mayor's position isn't any more prestigious than the city council. It's just that he serves at the pleasure of the council, and so it is somewhat of an honor to have been the mayor of this fair city.
I imagine you had a little bit of development going on at that time. Glendale was beginning to grow quite a bit.
We did, and that's at that time we were starting to develop the Galleria and obtaining that land, and there was a lot of people in opposition to it, as there were for the Americana. It's a little different today, but that was one of the problems in acquiring the land and so forth. Of course, we did ultimately have to condemn a couple of the pieces of property, but basically it came through real well and was very beneficial to the city of Glendale. And over the years, it has proven so.
Jim, you had mentioned to me one of the challenges you faced was, as I mentioned earlier, the development issue, and in particular, the Gregg development. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, that was probably one of the most difficult decisions that the council had to make. That went on for the hearings for that. Well, the environmental reports, some of you could get a stack of them this high. I had a couple of books that you get an environmental report like this, and it'd take you 100 years to read it. But that again, I think, turned out to be good for the city. There's a lot of property tax coming from that area, and those are high-quality homes. It doesn't please everybody because it scars the hills, but I think some of the hills look a lot better with that development on than with the brush that's up there and the brownness that we have now. Other things that we were doing, we were developing parks. Brand Boulevard had 500 acres. It was developed down below, but there was nothing up above, and the tea house wasn't there, and of course this came later with the Sister City Association. Mm-hmm. The Verdugos, we had studies made that we needed to buy that land, and we bought a lot of acreage. It wasn't people owned it, but they couldn't do anything with it because it was where it was and so forth. So the city did acquire that. We used part city money and part park money or bond money or money from the state rather to acquire that, and of course that was one of the essential things. Of course, we were also involved with Shoal Canyon. The stage 1 had been completed, and of course, I remember earlier on the park department when we voted to go ahead and do Shoal Canyon that I get calls at night, trucks in the canyon, 17 years, and this and that. But again, we made the right decision, and a lot of people were upset at the time, but you have to make those decisions. What's best for the city, not what's best for certain individuals, but what's best for you and I as citizens of the city.
Now, Glorieta Park, I understand, also went through some changes during this time, too.
At that point, we were negotiating with Edison, who owned the reservoir there. And so with the licensing agreement with them, they turned over Glorieta Reservoir to the City of Glendale, and that's why we have a park there at this particular point. But there's always a lot of ongoing things that need to be done, and as we're continuing to improve our parks and so forth. The library is another item that Weldon Beckett had designed, and I'm not sure why, but it was, I think, before my time on council that they designed it to be put on the corner of Broadway and Brand. When that came through, I didn't think it was a good place. The city manager didn't think that it was a proper place. We thought Central Park would be better, and so we had him redesign it. And this was in '71, and it was, I think, completed in late 1972. But it's, I think it's been very good where it is at this point. And of course, they're going to remodel it again now. Right. So that's part of the ongoing process that happens, that comes up to the city council. Right. We had a lot of things coming from past councils up to us, and now it's still progressing, and that's what's necessary.
Right. Now, Central Library might be considered one of your accomplishments while you're on the council. What else do you think were some of your accomplishments?
Well, it wasn't that great, but I did design we didn't have a city flag, and so I suggested to the city manager we ought to have one. He said, well, if you want one, you design it. So I designed the city flag. I designed it. I took the city seal and put it on there, and went to Pasadena and found a flag maker to make it. And today we have our yellow flag for the city of Glendale, which, you know, it's just one of the minor little things, but we enjoyed doing it.
Jim, one other thing I find notable during your time in office was you began working on the creation of the Redevelopment Agency.
Yes, that was an early thing. Again, a lot of opposition. People felt that this was, you know, you're going to take private property and so forth. But again, it has been a great thing for the city of Glendale, because it gave us room to grow, and we didn't have that room to grow in the downtown area. And so there was again people that didn't think that this was proper and so forth. But after I left, it was fully integrated into the city, and so there was a redevelopment agency. But it was started during my period of time. It wasn't culminated at that point, but I think that it's been highly beneficial to the city of Glendale.
Jim, one other thing that caught my eye was the decision to join with the city of Los Angeles to work on water reclamation. That must have been a pretty substantial project for you at that time.
Well, it was, and it was a major step, because the city of Glendale was running out of the processing of our sewage, and we didn't have any more capacity. And La Crescenta was coming in, and we were going to have to be putting sewers up there, which was going to go over our limit of what our capabilities were. So we decided to join with Los Angeles and build our water reclamation plant where it is today. And at that time, the planning was to be able to expand it on as the city grew. And so that was one of the major things that was necessary. And besides the benefit of being able to process our sewage, we were able to pick up reclaimed water. And that water is watering a lot of our parks today. They're selling water to the Oakmont Country Club So they're using a lot of the water. So it was a double-edged sword that we were able to go in and do that reclamation or make the project go. And Los Angeles, there were a few bumps in there, but it all got straightened out, and the project was highly successful. And I think we're not anywhere near capacity yet with our sewage.
It really allowed the city to grow at that time.
Oh, absolutely, because we were out of we didn't have room to process any more of the sewage and so forth. So it really worked out well for the city of Glendale.
As far as events go while you were in office, I was looking through some of the information you had there, and a gentleman by the name of Ronald Reagan paid a visit to Glendale.
Oh, yeah. Now, Ronald Reagan was running for governor, and I was very involved with the politics at that particular point, and I was his campaign chairman in the city of Glendale, and he came to Glendale with he and Nancy and so forth, and so we had our picture taken with him, and of course I was the delegate to the convention in Kansas City at that time, but he didn't get the nomination at that point because it went to Gerald Ford. But so I ended up working for Ford in the city of Glendale.
Jim, I know one thing that was very big at the time in the community was the Days of Verdugo parade. It seemed like just about everybody participated in that parade, true?
The Days of Verdugos used to be, I mean, the JCs put on this parade, and it was a big parade. It was a big 2.5-hour parade. We had bands and floats and horses. It developed on into a very lovely affair that we would end up selecting Miss Glendale and so forth, and have her participate in Miss California and so forth. And so that was but the Days of the Verdugos, we had our big yellow shirts and the big hats and so forth, and it was a major project for the junior chamber, and that was those were things that were outside the venue. I don't know how I practiced dentistry and made a living, but you see, when I was on city council, we met on Tuesday afternoon, which means you give the day off, but just the afternoon basically. But we didn't have any television, afternoon meetings, and we were delivered our portfolio on Friday afternoons for the following Tuesday's meeting. So we had the weekend to study this and to go review anything that we wanted to review, changes we were going to make here or elsewhere in the city. And so we had time, and then on Tuesday afternoon we had our meetings, and we always finished up generally before dinners. That Redevelopment went well into the evening, but so it was an entirely different area, and of course we still had people coming in to oppose a lot of the things that we were doing and so forth. But
well, and you made an interesting point. You mentioned to me that at that time the city council did not have offices at City Hall.
Unheard of. We were part-time councilmen. Today it seems like they're full-time council. That every day they're doing and have offices, this and that. It was totally out of the realm that we would even think about having an office in City Hall. We had enough to on our plates to take care of without being down there, and we considered it a part-time job. And of course, the great pay was $25 a meeting, and so.
Oh, was that your pay at the time?
Oh, that was our pay. Yeah, we got $25 a meeting, but the time was dedicated, and so the money was not why we ran for council.
Jim, anything you can look back on and find maybe a humorous moment or two that you had while you were in office?
Well, yeah, the most humorous one was we had a gentleman come up from Glen Oaks Canyon, and he was a regular attender, and he was complaining about dogs barking at night, dogs barking and so forth. Why didn't we do something about it? So the police did go up there, and when they got there, they found him out in the street barking to make the dogs bark. But those are the fun things that same Chevy Chase citizens were complaining about the speed going up and down their street. So we send the police up there, and they start issuing tickets, and 90% of the tickets went to the people who lived in Chevy Chase.
Who actually lived in the canyon.
Yeah.
Oh,
so they were doing the speeding, but they didn't like other people to speed, I guess. But those are the things that,
right. Right.
The fun times at the Sister City organization and participating in that.
Now, after you left office, Jim, you remained very involved in JC's, Junior Chamber, other organizations?
Well, yeah, I was president of the Junior Chamber, the Chamber of Commerce, the American Field Service, the Kiwanis Club, the JC's, Safari Club. And being a hunter, why I took that on. And that organization, I'm a charter member of it, and now it's all over the world.
I did want to mention the house here. It's beautiful, and you have a lot of the trophies from your days as a hunter.
Yes, I started hunting about 1970, 1965, somewhere in there. A friend of mine invited me to come to Texas and hunt white-tailed deer with him, and that got me started. And it was a lot of fun, but those days are pretty much over because the hills got too big and too hard to get up to the top of them, and so I now just limit myself to doing some duck hunting down in Mecca. I belong to a duck club down there, and then I still do some fishing. I've been to Costa Rica a couple of times, and then clear down on a 16-day trip on a boat. They went way down below Cabo San Lucas and so forth. Caught a lot of big yellowfin tuna. My biggest one was 185 pounds, and that was quite a thrill to ream that in. I wasn't sure whether I was going to get it or it was going to get me, but it worked out. Had a good time. I retired 14 years ago, and now I work very hard at playing. Sally and I are just enjoying life and doing a lot of traveling.
I do want to mention that you had the distinguished honor of participating in the 1984 torch run that came through.
I carried the torch down Glen Oaks Boulevard, and that was one of the most fun days of my life. Other than the day I got married, that was the biggest thrill. You just can't imagine. We had sort of a 4th of July party after the run, and of course we had beer and hot dogs and hamburgers and so forth. Those people didn't need any hamburgers or beer or anything. Everybody was so high that day that you couldn't believe it. And of course, I had decided that I would like to see some of the Olympics, and I had gone out to UCLA for one day a month to take courses to work in the Olympics. And so I was all set to do that, but they said, well, the tickets are going to be on a lottery basis. So I filled out, and knowing I wasn't going to get everything, I filled out everything there was, and I matched the days and so forth. I could do this and that. And I got all the tickets, and I ordered about $4,500 to be exact.
Wow.
But we went to all of this. I just closed my office, and the family would drive down to the Coliseum in 20 minutes and park because they'd changed all the traffic rules and people were going to work early and late and so forth. And that was a great 2 weeks that the Olympics were here. But carrying the torch, I still have the torches hanging on my wall here, and my uniforms back here with all of the pins and so forth that we ran through. But that was a great day for me and for the City of Glendale.
Jim, looking back on your days on the City Council and your service in the community, how would you like to be remembered?
I think that I'd like to be remembered as having done my best. That I dedicated the time and the energy and the effort that I thought that it took to be a good council person. I tried to listen, and I tried to please, and you do the best you can in those areas. And I frankly feel satisfied with myself that I did do those things. I have a clear conscience of all of the times and efforts that I put on the city council, and I feel blessed that I was able to do it. That the people of Glendale selected me to be their representative, and so those were great days. I enjoyed them all. I don't miss them anymore, and I sure wouldn't want to be on council today, because they have developed a lot of problems that we never had to face, and those are bygone days. And I hope that the council can continue to work together and represent the city like I think we've represented it back then.
Well, Jim, I'd like to thank you for inviting us into your home today and sharing your memories about your time on the Glendale City Council. I know it's been educational for me, and I'm sure it's been educational for the folks watching at home.
Well, it's been a re-education for me also. I've enjoyed it very much, going back with the memories that you conjure up with the different people that you meet, and the different projects that you get involved with. I've enjoyed this today, and I enjoyed all the years I've lived in the city of Glendale. I am glad that I was able to share some of my experiences and to be able to serve the citizens of Glendale. I think that is something that everybody really needs to think about. You know, the government of the city of Glendale is not your enemy; it's your friend. And those guys up there want to do what you want done within the realms of what's best for all of the citizens of Glendale. And I'm sure they're doing that. They're attempting to do that every day that they're there. So get involved. They're your friends. The people on the commissions are your friends. They're all neighbors. They're citizens of Glendale. And so just, get involved with the government, because the more involvement we have, the better off we are. We need to hear from that silent majority.
Thank you, Jim.